Okay, hey guys. Today we've got 5.3, and this has to deal with the quadratic formula. Now, the quadratic formula, I've got it written on both sides of the classroom. And we use the quadratic formula. We can really use it with any quadratic as long as the quadratic is what we call standard form. Okay, standard form is when we have our ax squared and our bx and plus our c, and we can honestly use quadratic formula in any situation. As long as it's in quadratics, we can use it to solve. We don't have to factor like we've been doing. It works every single time, but we're going to do the quadratic formula exclusively with 5.3. And there's a couple of points that I want to hit, and I'm going to show you how to use it and how we can use it most efficiently. How to type it into the calculator, kind of how to break it up into sections so the calculator work is a little bit easier. But calculator is definitely going to be needed for this one, especially for like the last, I don't know, there's 3 or 4 questions on the assignment that you will need a calculator. So 2 methods to solve quadratics. We can factor it. We set each factor equal to 0. We solve. That gives us 1. And then the second is quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula does work every single time. So if you find yourself struggling with factoring and solving, you can really just practice the quadratic formula, and you can use it anytime you want. But let's get into like why we use it and when and what have you. Okay, so this first problem that we have, if we tried to do the normal factoring with the x method here, we got our a times c and our b. Well, a is 4, c is 1, so if we multiply those together, we get 4, and then we got a negative 6. And as you're looking at it right now, we might see that we've got some issues, right? We don't have any factors of 4 that are going to add up to be 6. We've got 1 and 4, which is 5, or negative 1 and negative 4 is negative 5. And then 2 and 2 is 4. We don't have something that does 6. So this normal factoring method does not work. So we got the quadratic formula that's going to help us solve this. Now, there is a little tune that kind of goes along with remembering the quadratic formula, and I won't do it too much, but it's just goes to like the Pop Goes the Weasel song. So it's opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You don't necessarily need to memorize it, but it would be good to put it into your notes. And if you look around, look at what I have on the board, I've got it written a little bit different than this. I've got the opposite b, so the b I've got in parentheses plus minus square root, then I've got more parentheses, minus 4. Anywhere I have a variable, I've got parentheses. And this is a good habit to be in, especially when you start squaring negative numbers. Speaking of squared, I forgot to write it there. If you put it into the calculator wrong, you're going to get a wrong answer. The calculator is only as good as you are. So get in the habit, writing the question down first so that it's a little bit easier to put stuff into the calculator. Now, we've got b values in these first two parentheses. We've got an a value in these 2 right here, and then lastly we have our c value. So it's good to know which is which. So let's go with our a. A is going to equal 4. Okay. B is going to equal negative 6. And then c is going to equal 1. So we can go in and plug those numbers in. We got, nope. We got negative 6, negative 6. A is equal to 4 and 1. Okay, so let's start simplifying. This first b value, right? This thing right here. Instead of saying negative b in the formula, I like to say opposite b because we're always going to be changing the sign. That negative, this thing right here that is written in green now, that changes the sign of whatever our b value is. So we started with a -6, and then we're going to have a +6. So I got the plus, minus, I got under the radical. I'm going to work on that last. And then I've got this 2 times a down here in the bottom, which is going to give me 8. So if you wanted, we could do this in our head, but under the radical, and this is where using a calculator, I think this is the first part where you need a calculator. And I got -6, no 4, 4. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the camera mode so you can kind of see my calculator, how I'd type this in. So I've got, inside my parentheses, I've got -6. And then I'm going to square that. And I'm going to use the square button. I got -4. And then a was 4 again. And then I got 1. Now, biggest problems I see with people and making mistakes in their calculator work, right here, this -4, sometimes they'll put in a negative button. If you put in negative, the calculator thinks you're multiplying numbers together and not subtracting. So, whoops, I might need to delete that one, and I need to go back and put in a negative there. So, okay, I'm going to click enter, and I'm going to get 32. And, 4, you know what? I made a mistake. 4, 4, 1. Let me retype that in. So I've got my B value here, if you can even see in the screen, -4, then A is that 4 that's highlighted, and then we got our C value. Okay, there we go. 20, that's what I was looking for. Okay, so I have the square root of 20. Now, we can simplify, but Alex doesn't require us to simplify from here, so we're going to stop. Okay, stop at this point. Now, we do have 2 separate answers. This plus and minus thing right here, that means we have a positive version and a negative version. So as I write my answer, I'm going to have 6 plus the square root of 20 over 8. I'm going to have a comma. And as you're typing this into Alex, what I would highly suggest is type in the first one. I'd hit the fraction button first of all, then you can fill out the numerator and the denominator. You don't have to worry about highlighting anything and then hitting the fraction button. Just first thing you do, click the fraction button. Numerator, type 6 plus square root 20. And denominator is 8, and then I would highlight it. I would do Control C, which is copy, and then I'd arrow over, I'd do my comma, and then I'd hit paste, and you make sure you go in and change that positive to a negative, and you have your answer. That is perfectly good. Now, the square root of 20 is not a nice number. So it does want you to write the exact value, which this is the exact value. This is good. Okay, so let's do that one more time. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to go opposite b plus or minus square root in parentheses b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay. Go through. I've got my b value, which is -5. So I got 2 b values there. I got my a value, which is 5. I got that in 2 places. And then I've got a -1 down here, and I'm going to start simplifying. A negative times a negative. That gives me a +5 plus minus square root. And then I've got over 10. And now I'm going to plug this into the calculator. Okay, -5, 5, -1. Sorry, I got to remember it because I don't have it written down. We'll go here. And so I've got squared -5 squared minus 4, and then 5 was a was 5, and then c was a -1. Click enter, and that gives me 45. Okay, so I've got 45 right here. Yeah, we could simplify. We could find the exact square root of 45, which would end up being 3 root 5, but I don't need to do any of that. So I've got a positive version. So I got 5 plus root 45 over 10, and then I got 5 minus root 45 over 10, and I have my final answer. Okay. All right. Let's look at the next one. Actually, okay. This is where things get a little bit different. The instructions on this one say round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So we're going to have a little bit more calculator work on this one, but we're going to start off the exact same way. We start off with that quadratic formula. Opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, let's plug stuff in. I got a -8, and then I've got a -8 again. I've got a 2 and a 2. That's my a value. And then once again, for my c value, I've got a -1. Okay, let's simplify. Negative times a negative, I get a +8 plus minus square root. Let's see, I'm not going to do it in the calculator. 64 minus a -8, it's going to give me a +72, and then I've got 4. Okay, this is where we want to use the calculator. Now, pay attention. It is important how you type this in. You need to follow order of operations. And if you want to type this into a calculator all in one go, make sure that this top part has parentheses around it before you divide. I actually don't think it's easier. So 8, 72, okay. So I'm going to come back to my calculator. And in my numerator, I had 8, and I have a plus minus, so I'm going to start with the plus, and then square root of 72. Now, if I click divide by 4, I'm actually going to get the wrong answer right now. Because what the calculator is going to do is it's going to do the square root of 72 divided by 4 first, and then it will add 8. It will follow order of operations. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click enter at this point, and then I'm going to click divide, and this A and S means previous answer. So it's taking our numerator, which we already simplified, and we're going to divide by 4, and it's going to give me 4.12. We're rounding to the nearest hundredth, so this one right here doesn't make anything change, so I got 4.12. And then what I like to do is I'll actually arrow up. So I did this 4 plus root 72. I'm going to do the minus this time. That's going to give me this. And once again, I'll just hit divide by 4, and that gives me my other answer, negative 0.12. So we got 4.12, 4.12, and negative 0.12, and we have our final answer. Okay, we've got 2 more problems that we're going to work on. Now, this one is same as the first one. We still need to round to the nearest hundredth, but the thing that we need to pay attention to is this does not equal 0 yet. Before we do the quadratic formula, the equation needs to equal 0. So I'll minus 1 from each side, then I'll rewrite what I've got. I've got 6x squared minus 3x minus 1 equals 0. Now I can do the quadratic formula. Opposite b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Fill in. I got a -3. -3. Got 6 right here, 6 right here, and then lastly I've got that -1. We're going to simplify. So we got negative times a negative, so I got a +3 plus minus square root. Let's see, 9 minus a -24, I got 33. Once again, plug that into a calculator. And as I plug this one into a calculator, I'm going to show you guys one more time. 3 root 33 divided by 12. Clear it out. So I got 3 plus root 33. And instead of dividing by 12 right now, I'm going to click enter. And then I will divide by 12. That gives me 0.7. That 8 makes the 2 go up, so 0.73. And I'll arrow up again, just change that to a minus, repeat the process. So 0.73 and negative 0.23. So 0.73 and negative 0.23, because we're rounding, and we have our answer. Okay, that'll take us through most of the assignment. The assignment's only 12 questions. You guys should be able to barrel through this one pretty quick. But we got one, I want to show one more example of something that we haven't done quite yet. So we're going to start off the same way. This already equals 0, so that's good. And we're going to go opposite b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. We're going to plug stuff in. And I've got a 6 here, 6 here. I've got a 5 here, 5 here, and I've got a +2. Now I'll go -6 plus minus square root, and I got over 10. So this one, 36 minus 4 times 5 is 20, times 2 is 40. So 36 minus 40 is going to give me a negative 4. Okay, if you ever get a negative under a radical, we have to, and especially, and this is kind of your key, is where it says complex solutions. What complex means is we're going to have an imaginary number. Now, an imaginary number is if I have the square root of negative 1, that's going to equal I. Okay, so if I have the square root of negative 4, I can rewrite that as the square root of negative, I'm going to do square root of 4 times the square root of negative 1, but I know that the square root of negative 1 is I. So I could write this as the square root of 4 times by I. Now the square root of 4 we can do. That is a perfect square. So I got 2I in this case. So my final answer will be like negative 6 plus minus 2I over 10. Now this can be simplified. Alex doesn't make us do it, so I'm not going to do it. Negative 6 plus 2I over 10, and then negative 6 minus 2I over 10, and we've got our answer. Now, if you come across, now this is kind of a special case where we had a perfect square. That doesn't always happen. So hypothetically, say we get down to that last part, and underneath we have the square root of negative 20, right? The way I want you to write that is I'll do I and then root 20. That's perfectly okay. Normally in math, they'll write it square root of 20 and then they'll put the I last. As long as this radical, so this part of it, does not go over the I, you're good. But I would put it in front just because sometimes it's hard to notice when because if this radical kind of creeps over and it goes over your I, you're going to get it wrong. So put the I first. Make life a little bit easier on you. So if it was this one, I had the square root of 20, you'd write negative 6 plus I root 20 over 10, or whatever numbers you get, negative 6 minus I root 20 over 10. Okay, that's obviously not the answer for this one, but if you do get one that doesn't perfect square, you can still work with it. Okay, the assignment is in Alex, and it's posted on Canvas, and we'll see you later.